Four, five. Hi, everybody. Thanks very much for joining me today on having this discussion on the Pluto and Libra generation, and in particular, the Pluto and Libra generation's connection to the asteroid Chiron. Today, my main focus, as I was kind of researching this material and finding myself attracted to what it symbolizes, I found that there's an immense amount of stuff that's available that you can explore. So I won't be able to express everything that there is to know about this experience, but for me personally, I'm very interested in it because not only am I a Pluto Libra generation, but I have a fascination with how this energy is unfolding as humanity kind of goes through whatever it's going through at the stage. So my main focus today is to bring into awareness the transition that Chiron is kind of like unfolding through the Pluto Libra generation, as the heading suggests, and also to kind of highlight and offer thought processes for anybody that's watching this, as well as new people that are going to watch this that haven't actually understood anything about Chiron or Libra, etc. So it kind of like caters for the average astrologer, the professional astrologer, and for somebody that's completely new. So a lot of the material I'm going to share today is kind of trying to find that balance. And again, like I said, the main focus really is for contemplation. Okay, it's like a thought process that I'm really wanting to invoke in everybody today around how we can approach and see Chiron, and also maybe to a certain degree do the very thing that I'm sharing today, which is maybe shift our perspective a little bit about or our relationship to Chiron and see how that energy is actually manifesting on a frequency that might be a little bit different to how we've understood it in the past. Okay, so for me, again, with lots of my Aquarius stuff over there, I'm kind of really wanting to add the Uranian concept to this and think outside the box a little bit about how we approach Chiron and see it. Okay, so that's what I want to do today. In my presentation, this is how I'm going to kind of structure it. And again, the main focus is for contemplation on information that I would like to share. Okay, so if I just do the screen share over here quickly, I just set that up for everybody. Oops. Okay. So I just turn that like that. I just want to make sure that I can see. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Get a laser point over here. So just to start off, the relationship and understanding that I have of Chiron in itself has, and how this talk is going to be structured, correlates to the imagery that I have here. So to me, the archetype of Chiron in itself represents this relationship that we as human beings have to the physical world and the metaphysical world, okay? And that process of how we bridge this aspect of ourselves that is very much rooted in the Saturnian physical dimension, the physical material plane of existence, right? Which is represented through the centaur's body itself. And then as this process, as you can see there, the process of the man emerging out of the centaur's body in itself, representing the growth process, the axis of understanding our spirituality, which is the metaphysical aspects of our lives. So in astrology, we would then say that would be Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, okay? These are aspects of our psyche that are operating in a more sort of non-physical way as opposed to our more physical sense as Saturn. So by understanding that process, there is this interplay of physical, animalistic desires, nature's limitation, and there is this non-physical, non-linear experience, psychodynamics, shadow experiences that we access when we go into our psyche, when we go into the depths of our underworld, as it were, and how we actually emerge from the discovery of what exists beneath the bonnet, right? So we already identified that process of Chiron being there. Now, another kind of illustration that is really, really fascinating to me is the relationship that Chiron, of course, has to the archetypes of Saturn and Uranus. Again, Uranus situated outside the belt of Saturn, so Saturn correlating to the nature of time and a boundary. And so what we have is this linearity to the process. Everything pre-Saturn, of course, is our more personal and can be even considered to be subjective awareness. Whereas Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto operate outside this realm. So for us, those dynamics and archetypes, in my opinion, are non-linear. Of course, they're more feminine in that sense. They access more of a part of ourselves, again, like I mentioned, that was unconscious in that sense. So the fascination with Chiron as an asteroid, again, we can see it through the illustration there, comes through in how the solar system even works and how Chiron's interface with Saturn and Uranus. So we can immediately, from that place, deduct that Chiron is this bridge. So we have Barbara Hand Clow writes a book, and she kind of calls it the Rainbow Bridge. And what she's trying to, as far as I understand it, describe is that there is this energetic frequency that each and every one of us carries with us that is highly, highly attuned to the specific Uranus, Neptune, Pluto dynamics that are for our soul's journey. Okay, so we would then classify it as like a higher self. Okay, that type of language we can use. But if we want to maybe ground it a little bit more, we can say that Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, that Chiron energy, that energetic sensitivity. And if you also follow the work of Tom Jacobs as well, he's written some really fun stuff on how he also sees Chiron and also the access to the Aquarian age, which again to me is also a big part of what Chiron represents, and in particular what's going on in the world today. So we've got this Chiron energetic sensitivity, okay, that sits within our energetic field that is very sensitive to the dynamics that are Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And we all have that, okay? We all have that individually. That's what makes us unique. That's what, to me, also I find fascinating about Chiron is that, to me, it represents that ability to understand our individuality, okay? And the dynamics that separates us from everyone else, because we have that Uranian archetype within our subconscious that has all the far memory going from the back and all the sort of direction going forward, as Jeffrey talks about, right? The far memory going backwards and the far memory going forwards of what the soul's life path is or awakening experience. And Chiron is that bridge that brings it there. And then also the dynamic, I mean, Carl Jung, this is where this graph came from. You know, he talks a lot about the relationship to the shadow and the animus, and also the ego, the sense of self. And he also discovered and expressed as well the personal unconscious, the collective unconscious, and consciousness in itself. And what I find fascinating is all three of these diagrams kind of interlink together. If you can really see it, one is more on a material physical plane, one's more in an astrological kind of realm, and this is more on the psychological dynamics of how our consciousness and the boundaries within our psyche interact with each other. So again, you can see that there's a sensitivity in Chiron. Chiron sits over here and kind of allows us to be sensitive to these outside realms, which cannot really be described in words, in my opinion, because again, the fact that we would use words to describe these planetary archetypes already disassociates us from what they really are in that sense, because they are outside our boundaries of consciousness. So does everybody, get what I'm talking about here in terms of this connection? And that Chiron correlates to the man, the physical form, the woman, our physical form in itself, the body being a vehicle that is here to activate the awakening process within ourselves, the electrical system. And so in sort of spiritual, or let me put it to you this way, in more Eastern philosophies, this type of drawing and correlation would exist because essentially the frequency of Chiron and the relationship to these higher planetary awarenesses are present, but it's not fully awakened in the collective consciousness yet, because if it was, everybody would have evolutionary astrology readings, because we would be going, oh, where's my Pluto? Instead of looking at the sun, moon, and ascendant. Right. Okay. So that's the kind of overlay of this Chiron story and what it really brings to us. Now what we've got is the archetype of Libra, okay, the energy of Libra. So the 7th, and this was taken from the 2015 EA glossary, Jeffrey Wolf Green's material. The 7th is a cardinal house, okay, so the Libra energy in itself is cardinal, okay, it shares cardinal energy with Capricorn, Aries, and Cancer, and it's indicating a new evolutionary cycle, okay, or it's indicating a new evolutionary cycle is underway, right? And why is it initiating a new evolutionary cycle? Is because cardinal energy in itself reflects change through Aries, through the dynamic of Aries, and Libra being part of that square, as it were, initiates the social interaction. I think that's moving it out the way. The social dynamics that change. Capricorn correlates to the laws and conditions that change, which I'll get into. Okay, so we've got the cycle that we understand that Libra correlates to change through the archetype of cardinal energy. And as he writes, to experience the intent of this cycle, the 7th house, Pluto people have been involved in a variety of relationships. Now I'll expand a bit on that. Through this comes the exposure to different value and belief systems of all kinds. Now, if you pay attention or look at the sensitivity of what's being described here, you can see that there is this desire or this experience of exposure to different value and belief systems of all kinds. Okay, so there's multitudes of different ways in which things can be experienced. There is new experiences that are taking place. And to experience the intent of this cycle, the 7th house Pluto people have been involved in a variety of relationships. Now, if you are an astrologer that speaks to Pluto and Libra generation souls, you'll know that a vast majority of them are in relationship dynamics in which they are either at some point divorced, or they're living separately from their original partner. They're living separately, that have children, and a large majority of them are kind of like in this position within themselves where they want to be needed in relationships and they are evolving through relationships, but there's also that emotional paradox of wanting freedom at the same time to explore their own initial self-identity. And that dynamic, that emotional paradox that Jeff talks about and that is very present in the psychology of the Pluto-Libra generation is what's at the fundamental root of today's discussion. How the Pluto-Libra generation are connected to the embodiment of Chiron. Okay, so we know that Chiron correlates to the activation of spirituality through recognizing and being sensitive to transpersonal planets. Okay, and we see the Pluto-Libra generation stuck in a place in which there is the social change that's occurring. Okay, so Aries in itself, and this is important because the next slide will then begin to make sense with the charts. Aries in itself reflects new direction, right? So instinctually, a new direction, I don't know what it is, I'm discovering it. At that same token, it initiates a new emotional reality. That new emotional reality is, I mean, self-explanatory, but it's like as soon as we go in a new direction, there's a whole new way in which we experience our life, right? Through emotion, through relationships, through your relationship to coffee. Now all of a sudden maybe you decided to become a vegan, all that type of stuff becomes available at that stage. Immediately what that does is it reconstructs new social dynamics for not only whoever is initiating the new change, but also the emotional realities are now being integrated where different value systems and belief systems are being exposed to. And so through that instinctual change and emotional development of a new reality and the new exposure to new egos, Libra, we begin to then develop new laws, new structures in which we contain that emotional reality in. And that whole cycle then is what this cardinal stuff is about. So we've got Chiron accessing that, we've got shift in change. And so now we begin to understand a little bit more about why this story and this focus of Chiron. So this is the discovery chart of Chiron, and this was happening on the 1st of November, 1977, okay, I can't remember the exact time of birth, but according to the research on the internet, it was in Pasadena. Now, look at this. This was really, really fascinating to me. Now, this is a subjective interpretation, and again, we can always just make up stuff wherever it is, but what I find fascinating is the connection of the North Node and Pluto and Venus, okay? in that position in Libra over there. And also Uranus and the sun connection in Scorpio, right? So to me, Scorpio is always about going beneath the surface to access the unconscious layers of our psyche, right? And Uranus is transmutation, right? It's the liberation of the soul. It's the ability to access and free ourselves from the conditioning patterns. So that symbolism in there already brings that element of mutation, that element of really, really accessing the depths of our souls and our psyche and bringing it to the surface, the sun. It becomes, very much about individuality again, which to me, I also think that Chiron plays a massive role in understanding what our individuality is beyond the idea of individuality, like, oh, I like this, and so I do that, and that's how I associate myself with the group, and that's my individuality. I'm talking about stuff that I don't know if any of you guys have explored the gene keys or human design and how they go into the fractal nature of your DNA and stuff like that. Like some people eat at night and that's good for their DNA structure, where some people need calmness. Like accessing the subtleness in your psyche and being able to live in accordance with those types of dynamics, have not actually been available to humanity on such a large scale before. Whereas with the explosion of the internet and 2016, that consciousness is spreading a lot faster than what it has been in the past. And that's what I'm linking over here, is that acceleration of the mutation of our collective psyche is coming through with the Chiron's discovery. It's like really, really amplifying the story. And then of course, just to add some beauty to the situation, right, Libra, the Pluto is in Libra during this discovery. It's also at the 15th degree, if that makes any sort of, Sabian sense, but you've got the North Node there as well, and Venus. So this initiation of change, Libra, right? If we take away the generation and the souls itself, we just look at the symbolism of where the planetary archetypes were taking place, it's in a cardinal energy. It's shifting, it's changing. So we've got that big taking place over there. Now, this chart that you're looking at right now is really fascinating to me because this is the chart of today, okay? Now, for most of you that have been following the energies very intensely for the last maybe 3 or 4 years, you would have noticed that the story of Pluto transiting through Capricorn has very much been about the structures of reality and the unconscious patterning of how we define ourselves, etc. Really, really coming down, and we're going through this process of who are we and where do we belong and how do we define ourselves, and all those wonderful questions that you can, access when you read the billions of articles that have been written with Pluto in Capricorn. But Uranus is square in Aries. Again, we're looking at cardinal signs over here, right? We're looking at Jupiter transiting Libra. Now, again, Jupiter hasn't been there for the last 3 years. So the significance of that Jupiter in Libra is, I find fascinating, is that we're going through this huge cardinal shift right now with this T-square. And in fact, on the 12th of January, the full moon that takes place with the moon situated in Cancer is going to really, really bring an incredible amount of shift in perspective regarding everything. We've just recently had the south node of the moon transit over Neptune. We've had Mars move over there as well. And Venus is going to be moving into the party of Pisces. So you can see there's a lot of symbolism around here where our emotional reality towards how we defined ourselves as not only a collective but individual people has been completely and utterly radically shifting and changing. Okay. And the intensity of that experience is coming into play with Jupiter moving through Libra, which is highlighting and accessing and accelerating the whole entire Pluto and Libra generation because their Plutos are there, right? So there's a very beautiful synchronicity around this mutation taking place, this change taking place. But the last 3 or 4 years with Uranus square Pluto, that's been activating a lot of this sort of like subconscious work where Saturn's transit through Scorpio, after it finished Libra, was bringing all the shadow work in. It was like all of a sudden an astrologer became incredibly popular because everybody's going on the internet going, what is going on? Why is there madness? Like, I'm having all these things here. I'm becoming sensitive. I don't like this food anymore. I've stopped doing that. I've had a spiritual awakening. And all this type of stuff, this madness is just accelerated because of the dynamics that are taking place right now. And the synchronicity is that Pluto connection in Capricorn, of course, squaring Jupiter now in Libra, Uranus in opposition to that. And then, of course, we have Saturn squaring Chiron. Now, Chiron is in Pisces, right? So Chiron in Pisces in itself, reflecting to us the healing dynamics, the complete and utter dissolving of the laws and governance that we have had prior to this moment. So everything going forward from here onwards out is in a whole entire evolutionary new direction emotionally for us. And that's why it's so tough for many people, because it's like, where is my center of gravity? Okay. And all of a sudden there's healing popping up all over the place. Everybody's talking about this, that, and the next thing. And we're noticing a very deeper connection towards our life. We're looking beyond the physical senses and asking the bigger questions. And as that sensitivity Chiron's in Pisces, it's saying, hold on, guys, is there really a boundary between us as in our center of self and the more larger transpersonal planets? Is there something larger going on over here? And just as Chiron's been in Pisces, the collective consciousness has become aware of Pluto in a bigger way. The collective consciousness has become aware of more of technology accessing pictures of Jupiter and the solar system in the collective consciousness. I'm talking about people that are just like had the luxury of having an encyclopedia and they know Jupiter. I'm talking about everybody in the internet going, hey, I know Chiron. I know what Jupiter looks like because the pictures have been taken. It's like it's there. It's in our collective consciousness. And that's the point here. It's like it's no longer becoming a process of us knowing about these transpersonal planets through luck. It's like everybody has access to us and it's being stimulated by some really, really intense energies. And the Pluto and Libra generations are in a really interesting place, because if you look at the generational gap, flow, you've got Pluto and Virgo, right? You guys carry the Pluto-Uranus connection there in Virgo, right? Now, this is a chart of somebody that has Chiron in Pisces. And of course, not every single Pluto and Virgo soul is going to have Chiron in Pisces. They're going to have it between, I think, Capricorn and Aries, maybe not Capricorn as much, just mainly Aquarius. But the point I'm trying to make here is that you guys have lived your story and are now at a point where your children and your age, you're reaching your Chiron return, okay? And have maybe had it already. So you guys have earned this kind of, like I wrote it down over here, you guys have earned the freedom from your Saturn work, okay? And this is the link that I wanted to put in. The Mercury retrogrades made it a little bit difficult, so I do apologize. But you guys have reached a point where you've lived long enough to understand your kind of transpersonal planets and how they've evolved, right? So when you were born, 1966, in that period of time, Uranus and Pluto made that connection. You carry that energetic imprint in you. But it's only now, as Uranus squares Pluto right at this point in time, do you become aware, because it's a first quarter square, of what that initial conjunction was actually about. Because that liberation that you're feeling from the restriction and duties and services, and most of you guys have healed your mind already in terms of the incessant doubt and feelings of lack and I'm not worthy, or I'm overwhelmed because my emotional reality is too highly strung, etc. All of that stuff has now come to completion, and you're sitting on the other side going, okay, I can breathe, right? I can kind of like look at reality and feel a little bit more relaxed about my life. And you've earned that kind of Saturn freedom from all the work of the daily activities of whatever you needed to do to pay your bills, etc. And on the other side, we've got the wonderful children that are predominantly Pluto and Virgo. The Pluto and Virgo have got the Pluto and Scorpio children, not all of them, but majority of them, okay? They're on the other side going, hold on, we haven't actually integrated ourselves into society yet. And we don't know what society looks like because we're at a point where none of the society has actually adjusted itself in accordance with what our frequency represents. So we're in no man's land going, who are we? Where do we belong? The world doesn't kind of make sense to us in that sense. And the Pluto and Virgos are like, we're free. And then smack bang in the middle, the Pluto and Libra is going, oh, one side of us is already awakened going, I really want to follow my dreams. But on the other side, I'm still dealing with the karmic commitments that I made pre-awakening. So I've still got to pay my bills. I've still got to experience what it means to wake up and take my child to school every single day. So they don't have any freedom. And the freedom that they do have is very limited because they're still in their Saturn work, right? But it's funny because the embodiment process of the Chiron transpersonal planets has to be coming through them, because they don't have the opportunity. As my partner said, she was like, I have children, they're screaming in the other room, but meditation tells me I've got to sit every single Wednesday and connect to this higher little place over here and feel what God means. It doesn't make sense. How am I supposed to spiritualize? And that was the key point. The key point was that spiritualization is not about going outside the body. It was about recognizing the psychological and unconscious dynamics that are present with you in every moment, and then emotionally connecting the body, or should I say connecting the body to the emotional body, and then understanding what psychological dynamics you have in the moment and living through that, because that's your story. So it's like we're in an initial change. We got all that cardinal energy, and the Pluto and Libras are in one side where you see Pluto and Virgo is free, and then the other side, the Pluto and Scorpio is going, we're also free, but we're kind of not integrated. And it's freedom. They can do whatever they want. You guys can do whatever you want. You've got that freedom to spend 3.5 hours on workshops and webinars, etc., and do body courses. But the Pluto and Libras will start going, okay, I've got to go to work today and pay my bills, but I hate this thing because it's not who I am. I've got to self-actualize. And it's literally two extremes on the other side. And it's about integrating it. Like they are literally, and if you see it like this, if you see the process of everything is unfolding, right? These systems, these planetary systems are just moving in cycles. And so 1966 was awakening process with Pluto conjunct Uranus, the acceleration of the soul awakening into the collective consciousness and then coming through the healing dynamic, Virgo. The Pluto and Libras are in the middle of that transition, and the Pluto and Scorpios will have already embodied that process, because by the time they reach their Saturn returns and begin to start that process, Capricorn or Pluto through Capricorn would have already been completed, or a majority of that process would have been completed. So we've finished with that story. Whatever it was that Pluto and its nth degrees are going to reveal to us, that society will look exactly what the Pluto and Scorpios are yet to do, which is complete annihilation, the Scorpio archetype. So you see this flow of how everything's awakening. And it's right bang in the middle, the Chiron story of Pluto and Libra generation, when they were awakened, when it became available in our collective consciousness in 1977, everyone post that experience is living that story. And you can see here with Neptune and Sagittarius, right? Their spiritualization comes through their belief systems, their core cosmology, right? Where do I belong? What is my philosophy? Where, the experience of really spiritualizing Neptune and accessing that higher space. Whereas the Pluto and Virgos was very much about spiritualizing through the abandonment and loss and betrayal, like where is God? Whereas the Pluto and Scorpios, look where their Neptune is, in Capricorn, dissolving the structures. So they're growing up in a world where Donald Trump becomes president. He's not a politician through the category, but in 1966, anybody of that nature coming into presidency would have always been through political process. Can you see the shift? And then in the middle is the Pluto and Libra is going, but I know about life pre-Facebook and I know about life post-Facebook, or like with Facebook, right? Whereas the Pluto and Scorpio is like, but we always had smartphones, didn't we? The Pluto and Virgo is like, we used to build things with wooden little and put them together and throw mud at each other, etc. And it was only now, probably like we're 45 years old, then we get a smartphone. And even that's weird. Do you get the story? This awakening experience. And so this transition, and it's really, really fascinating. Now, I want to quickly go back to this chart. And Linda, if you can just tell me how much time I've got left. Hold on, there we go. 9 minutes, never mind. What's fascinating is that for me personally, I have 2 children that are born with Pluto and Capricorn. Now, I have Pluto Libra 29 degrees. And my story is very much about the Pluto and Capricorn kind of like emotional dynamics. My children are my 10th house, story. Whereas a lot of the Pluto in Libra generation souls have got children that have got Pluto and Sag, okay? And I've watched the dynamics that take place. The Pluto and Sag kids are very much relaxed. They're chilled out. They're just doing whatever they're doing, etc. But the Pluto and Capricorns, these guys are a completely different kettle of fish. They need like intense rigidity and structure, and they need to have strong parents. It's just like that's how they are, because they are so powerful. And I don't know if you guys have noticed, but there's a little film that's come out recently called Baby Boss or Little Boss. It's an animation. That's a Pluto and Capricorn child, right? You see it? So what's fascinating is that they are the change on an emotional level. So let me put it to you this way, okay? How does the Pluto and Libra correlate to the embodiment through Chiron? Well, look at it this way. For me, when I grew up, I had a lot of patriarchal conditioning on me, shut down the emotional body, didn't have the ability to have my individuality expressed in that way. My children have this opportunity where I have the consciousness and the availability of all of the information out there of years and years of research of emotional development, okay, for children. That is available to me at any point. So I read that, I absorb that inside of myself, and then every single day I'm practicing that story with my children so that their emotional development doesn't become like fractured and also stifled through the Pluto and Capricorn story. In other words, their polarity point, Cancer, is emotional validation. You get it? So we are, with our children, literally, and our environment, literally embodying all of the consciousness that's coming onto the planet that's freely available, and inputting it into, and then acting in accordance with that, which is then developing children with emotional individuality. So by the time they get to their 30s, they won't have the same psychological issues we had when we had our Saturn return. Do you see it? And so that flow is what that shifting's about. And it's really, really fascinating as well, because I don't know if you guys, like I said, if you looked into human design a lot, and it's really, really fascinating to me that Jeffrey Wolf Green and that the other guy, Ra, they were Pluto Leos brought through this embodiment of knowledge, okay? And Jeffrey talked about the south node of Neptune situating in Aquarius. And if you look at Pluto, it's going to transit the south node of Neptune in Aquarius in 2027. And Ra also talks about a new race of emotional beings coming onto the planet where they won't know that there is a separation between themselves and God. In other words, the dynamic between the subconscious and transpersonal planets and the awareness of that and their personal self will be fully integrated. And you know what's fascinating? Chiron returns at the exact moment. In 2027, in June, it was June, about the 7th of June, it hits the exact return. And that's fascinating to me, because by the time Chiron hits its return, that energy pattern would have meant that we would have received almost, like 10 years. So 10 years from now, think about the acceleration of consciousness and healing and the awakening of soul, and how evolutionary astrology plays into how popular it's becoming now, as people are going, hold on, I didn't know that my Pluto in the 12th house meant this. I've always thought that it was my moon here. This story of us becoming more connected with this transpersonal stuff, and these Zoom meetings, this Zoom meeting, imagine how many Zoom meetings we're going to have of this content in 10 years' time, and how much of that stuff's going to be integrated into the children that are coming onto the planet, and also the young Sagittarian minds that are writing on my YouTube saying, oh my God, like, wow, this is amazing. And I'm flipping out going, what? Why is there Pluto Sagittarius reading this? That's cool. Like, I'm getting excited that they're attracted to it, and they're fascinated by it, because in their own genetic in-play, they already have that awakened process, right? So by 2027, the amount of material that we would have assimilated into our genetic imprinting would have already come to the point where it would be natural for us to go, oh, Facebook, this has always been around. Oh, Sol, this has always been around. You see? Really, really amazing stuff to contemplate. And there's about 4 minutes left over here. And I just wanted to kind of go over to this last slide quickly. And it's fascinating because we talk about soul, and we talk about the development of or the awareness of Pluto. But you know that we've also discovered Neptune. We've also discovered the Maya as well. And the Maya in itself, I don't know if you guys have discovered it yet, but I highly suggest you go onto the internet and research and read up about the nature and discovery of neutrinos. Neutrinos are these subatomic particles that exist in the atoms themselves that move faster than light. And they are, as this picture over here, about 65 million neutrinos pass through your thumbnail every second. That is the fabric of consciousness. That is the fabric of this existence. That is how astrology works, because in the neutrinos is the information of the universe that passes through us. And so naturally, when we have Uranus square Pluto and the frequency of that energetic pattern vibrates outwardly, when it comes to Earth, grounding, coming into the center, Earth is grow. You put plants in the earth to grow. you notice how that then adjusts the frequency and accelerates our consciousness. The fact that we can become aware of that process and understand it and then integrate it into our consciousness is the living proof of Chiron and its connection with Uranus. The acceleration, the quantification of our ability to understand multidimensionality and how we actually exist in this universe. And all of that stuff just pulsating through our consciousness completely and awakening us to even more realms of the subtlety of how we understand ourselves beyond what we could have considered what life was like when we were living in the Dark Ages, for example, or maybe in the 1800s, where people that would be talking about this would be burnt at the stake. Ask the Pluto Virgo generation. And here's another example again, just all this contemplation stuff over here. The physical body, right? Saturn, soul, spiritual body, and then Chiron. Hey guys, there's no separation. They're all the same thing. We are here having a spiritual experience in a human form, and the human form is having a spirit and is also having a spiritual experience, right? You get that dynamic there. Spiritual person having a human experience and human experience having a spiritual experience. The paradox in the middle, balance. And it's all about the genetic imprinting and how this is adjusting ourselves. I want to show you something over here. If you can have a look right at the bottom where my cursor is, those are people on boats. Can you see how small those people are? Those are people on boats. And in Japan, they have built this humongous underground container. And all those little things that looks like little bubbles, those are mirrors, little bubble mirrors. And this over here is water. And this tank is huge, as you can see by the dimension of that little man on a boat over there. And they've developed this to try and capture neutrinos. Okay, this process, the scientific experiment. And as you can see, 65 million neutrinos pass through a thumbnail every single second, and they've only been able to track 6. 6 is the highest amount of neutrinos that they've been physically able to actually get on their little infrared, computers and stuff like that through this mega construction. So the fact that science has already validated Neptune in itself shows us the fabric of existence exists. And this is how this telepathy works and the access of it. So there's no difference that when you're sitting here talking to me and when you watch the Zoom meeting 3 weeks later, it's still in real life because there is no separation in time. And that's that point that I'm trying to make here. Before, we never had this technology, so we couldn't experience that time. Afterwards, now this is normal to us. So yeah, that's where I'll end today. Thanks very much for allowing me to share this with you. And as always, what an amazing opportunity to really gaze at the star and accelerate our consciousness further.
Great. Thank you so much. That was fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Simon.
it, everyone.
That was wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Simon.
Thanks, Simon. Awesome job.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. I can see there's 1 minute left over there if it kills it off. Otherwise, anybody can ask a question if they wish.
Might be a bit late for that, I think. Yeah.